Back to another Polytalks video, and this time we will be discussing the far away but ever approaching 2024 United States Senate elections. And we've already made a video going over these before, but given it's been roughly a month, I've decided to make another one in which I explain how circumstances have changed, which, to be quite frank, they haven't much, although there have been some recent developments which I will certainly be inclined to cover. And I would say that this will be another interesting episode where we can kind of see our almost guessing predictions of where we will be over a year out, and then we can certainly compare these and have a laugh with the actual results come a year and around a year and a half, if not even a little more, until the triple presidential, Senate, and House, and, should I say, quadruple, including governor races, which are happening in a select few states. So, we'll begin by characterizing the safe states, as we normally do. So, Iowa, I do not expect it's certainly not been competitive over the past few election cycles, and I don't expect it will be now, barring some unseen circumstances, and that can be said for pretty much all of these states, which I'm characterizing right now. Utah, for example, Idaho, and I would say this is the wrong Senate map, so I apologize for that. But we can rather embarrassing. Okay, Senate 1. So this is the correct Senate map, so now I will actually begin to characterize these races. So, yes, as I was saying, it is exceedingly unlikely that any of these states which I am characterizing right now do end up switching their composition by election day. Washington, I'm going to keep it safe, even though it's been teetering on the edge of likely this past few years. That is not what I meant to do. And California, so we'll do that. We'll have New Mexico. It cannot be characterized yet. Now let's do some of these states. Again, barring some unforeseen circumstances, I don't see them turning any other way. There's Bernie Sanders' seat, New York, New Jersey. Get a lot of Democratic seats up this year, which does not necessarily mean they have a greater chance of retaining the Senate. It just means there are more Democrat seats up this year, just as there are more Republican seats up in 2022 and 2020 Senate elections. So, now we get to the states that can even slightly be characterized as competitive, and I'll just do the likely ones right now. I don't see Texas going to Democrats. I think Beto O'Rourke has kind of squandered his political career in Texas at this point. I think he made two ill-fated decisions following his senatorial campaign, a kind of self-aggrandizing presidential campaign that really didn't achieve much, and then he, of course, ran for governor, which really did not end up well for him. So it's kind of, again, like Stacey Abrams, a very difficult position to rebound from, but perhaps we will see it, although I'm doubtful. Virginia, it's not necessarily a safe state for Democrats, but it's quite close. Maine, I don't see any major surprises happening there. And Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar's seat, and actually this may come as a surprise, but assuming the incumbent runs in Pennsylvania, which I'm quite confident of, I'm going to say it's actually a likely state, because I do think this is a very popular incumbent, and in a presidential year, I think Democrats already have the edge in the presidential electoral votes here, and I think given Bob Casey's popularity, I think he'll even outperform those results, so I'm going to say that's a likely one. New Mexico is also likely for Democrats, so I've already got 15 to 11, and I believe that's it for the likely states. And look, in my haste to characterize these states, a state I would almost always characterize as safe Republican, West Virginia, I must refrain this time for reasons I will explain later. So, now we move on to the lean states. And for me, I think one of those is Michigan. It may be a little odd seeing that so lean blue, but the reason is the incumbent is retiring, so there is a bit of uncertainty there over what might happen in that race and who might run, and if so, how they will do. So that's simply why I'm not jumping to characterize that one right off the bat. And as likely, and Wisconsin, I also think, is lean, assuming Tammy Baldwin runs again. She's quite popular, but Wisconsin has been trending somewhat reddish in the past few years, so can't be too sure to call that one for the Democrats. But that is really the pure baseline of what Democrats really need to get locked down by Election Day. I've mentioned this point before about how they have such little margin for error that they really need to have certain states that they just can absolutely rely on, don't need to spend massive amounts of funding there, and divert from key races like Montana. And speaking of Montana, the incumbent Jon Tester, a Democrat, has recently decided he will run for re-election, which is a massive boost to Democrats' hopes. Without him, they were pretty much doomed in Montana. So with his announcement of running for re-election, I still think this seat is slightly favored to go to Republicans, but now it's so slight, it's almost exactly a toss-up. So that is good news for Democrats. They can certainly win that if they push for it in the campaign. And that's another one they should really have locked down because they've got even harder ones than this. But now we move on to their two easier ones. Nevada, I don't think Jackie Rosen will face any kind of massive threat here. She might, of course, but Nevada seems to be one of those states that people always discuss as being competitive for Republicans, and it never actually goes. It's like the Democratic equivalent of North Carolina. So I do expect that it'll be lean. And Arizona is actually another interesting case, but I still think that however it shakes out, I think someone's got to drop out in that race, and that will lead to, I think, the more Democratic-leaning candidate winning. So I'm going to say tilt blue, and when I say blue, I mean Kyrsten Sinema is included within that blue, just as Bernie Sanders is included as blue, despite the fact he's independent in the U.S. Senate. So now we have 2 seats left, and Democrats, assuming they fail to win the presidency, they're going to need both of these. If they do win the presidency, they can afford to lose one of them and have a 50-50 Senate majority. So we will now characterize them. So we'll start with Ohio, and Ohio is another one I just think is tilt red. I think it's a tough case for the Democrats, but I think it's just one they're going to have to accept. It's not very likely to go to Democrats anytime soon. And we saw it in 2022. It was mentioned as being competitive, and it wasn't that much of a win for Republicans, but they certainly had a solid lead, and that was a terrible candidate as well on the Republican side, and he won by 7 points. So I think even though Sherrod Brown is the incumbent and he has won big in the past, without a blue wave environment to carry him over the finish line, he will struggle. And so we have one final state left, and assuming Democrats do win the presidency, which I'd say is slightly on the likelier side right now, we will see this state determining Senate control. But unfortunately for Democrats, I think this one will be quite lean Republican. I don't think it'll be a massive blowout for Republicans, but certainly I think in this race, they will struggle to field a candidate that can win here, even Joe Manchin, who has done so well to win the past few elections, even if he runs again, which I certainly don't think is a given. I think he'll really struggle in this race. So that is it, folks. Those are all the Senate seats up the cycle, and with this prediction, Democrats would certainly lose the Senate, but it would be 51-49. So assuming Ron DeSantis wins, they can easily recapture that in the 2026 midterms. So that is it for today. There were not many changes. The main one was simply Jon Tester's announcement, which I thought I'd share with you. But other than that, we're looking at kind of a frozen narrative at this point. But I'm sure, absolutely positive, that will not continue forever. See you later. Bye.